Honorable President Mehta, Honorable President Fakim, Mr. Fomunio, Ms. Mutale, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to virtually be among you today, even though I wished that we could have this discussion in person, where we could exchange ideas and share thoughts by communicating in the same space. But given the current situation, the virtual space will do. I would like to profoundly thank Ms. Mutale and the Justina Mutale Foundation for extending the invitation for this discussion today. I'm truly honored to be amid such an excellent composition of speakers, and I'm also using this opportunity to congratulate Ms. Justina Mutale on her advocacy for gender equality across the world, and specifically the remarkable impact that her work has had on the African women. 2 decades ago, the Beijing Platform for Action projected a global society where the girls would be equal to the boy in the way that they grew up, how they were treated inside the families, and the variety of opportunities they had available to make their dreams a reality. Similarly, the Platform for Action imagined a universal community where women had a fair treatment in the job market. They were not discriminated against in politics and the decision-making processes because of their gender. It projected a world where women would not be subject to violence and abuse by their partners, brothers or fathers. And most importantly, that platform envisioned a world where women had freedom to choose what they wanted to do with their life, career, and education. And in this ideal picture of this world, where the fight for gender equality would be a chapter of the past, women would be empowered within their own household, communities, countries, and globally. Their voice would be heard loud and clear. Their wants and needs would be respected and cared for, and their representation would be equal to man's, with just as many rights as men possess. Young girls would have the opportunity to choose careers that would not be predefined for men. Women would not have to choose between creating a family and having a successful career. Their economic dependency wouldn't be an issue anymore, and their consent on all issues would be crucial on all decisions which are being taken. Unfortunately, the global community failed to comply with the goal that Platform for Action has set. No country in the world has reached full gender equality, even after more than 2 decades of creation of this platform and hundreds of years after the continuous fight for the gender equality. So my dear ladies and gentlemen, I believe that I speak on behalf of everyone in this discussion when I say that we have failed the women of our countries. We have failed our grandmothers, whose wisdom had followed us through our life. We have failed our mothers, who spent their life caring, nurturing, and educating us. We have failed the women of our generation, who have worked tirelessly by giving more than twice of the effort than their mere colleagues to reach to where they are now, beating the odds and doing what was thought to be impossible. Every nation has failed to reach the zenith of the gender equality. There is no single country in the world today where women enjoy the absolute same rights as men, and they are treated the same as them. When I say that we failed, I'm speaking of our unsuccessful attempts to empower women within their own households. According to the report of the UN Women, up to 70% of women have experienced psychological and or sexual violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime. And when I say that we failed, I'm speaking of our failed efforts to take gender equality to the national level. we have witnessed more women in leadership positions than we had before. Nonetheless, the numbers are yet far away from a decent representation. World Bank has shown that there are only 24.6% of women parliamentarians in the world. Only 11 women are currently holding positions as head of state, and only 12 are serving as heads of government. This situation depicts a clear underrepresentation of women in the decision making. When I say we failed, I'm referring to the lack of women's economic empowerment in the world. In 2019, we had only 5.6% of women in the labor force worldwide. So, ladies and gentlemen, only 5.6% of the women in the entire world are a part of the workforce. Please think this through. When I say we failed, I am referring to the lack of the social responsibility to raise strong and independent women. An estimated number of 650 million women and girls in the world have been married before the age of 18. Furthermore, 2/3 of the world's 796 million illiterate people are women. This lack of progress became even more emphasized during this year, when the entire dynamics of the world has stalled, and people were forced to stay inside their homes for weeks. For some of us, the pandemic was a period when we bonded with our families, spent time watching movies, and catching up with our hobbies. But for some, the pandemic was a brutal period, during which people lost their loved ones, their jobs, their freedom, and many of them were prone to domestic abuse. I have followed COVID-19 developments continuously, and not only I, but the entire world has witnessed a pattern of the domestic violence increase around the globe. Women had to face abuse while being completely locked and having no other place to go to. They were living in the same household with their abusive partners. The coronavirus affected the spread of a different pandemic that has long infected our societies, that of a domestic violence and the sexual exploitation. And during such circumstances, historically, women bore the heaviest burden, and this was the case even during these trying times. In addition to the uncertainty of this entire global occurrence, women had to face neglect in their household while balancing their work responsibility and the family obligations. In the 21st century, we have managed to make a profound innovations in technology and economy that have transformed our societies entirely. Network technology, human-computer interface, biochemical engineering, digital workspaces are only some of the advances we have made that I can name now, that have eased the way we live and function in society. Yet, it was way easier to have a technological revolution that requires decades of studying and field expertise than to make a social revolution, that of the gender equality. Despite the obstacles along the centuries, we have had an amazing, intelligent, fierce, persistent, and undeniable competent women who have paved the way towards a gender equality and have set a standard for all of us to follow. Be them from the field of science, art, politics, economics, culture, or health. They have been the pioneers of standing up against social injustice, and they have become the inspirational personalities that have broken the societal rules. I have to mention only some of the personalities who have changed our lives for the better. Although I know that I will not be able to mention all of them in this speech, but since we are marking the 25 years from the creation of the Beijing platform, I want to have some of their names heard loud and clear as we mark this important milestone. Starting from my role models and the powerful women that have shaped international politics, Secretary Albright and Clinton, Britain's first woman elected Prime Minister, our Iron Lady Thatcher, the current change makers, Chancellor Merkel, Prime Minister Arden, the Prime Minister Jakobsdottir, the human rights activists as Mother Teresa and Malala Yousafzai, to environmental activists as young and bright as Greta Thunberg, Rosa Parks' civil rights movement, Marie Curie, founder of the new science of radioactivity, first woman to win Nobel Prize and the first person to win a second Nobel Prize, and the first female professor of the University of Paris. Emmeline Pankhurst, who founded the Women's Social and Political Union to campaign for the parliamentary vote for women in Edwardian Britain, whose famous motto, "Deeds, not words," is relevant to this day. Ada Lovelace, a gifted mathematician, considered to be the first computer programmer to the Rosalind Franklin, expert crystallographer. These women, ladies and gentlemen, have defeated gender roles and have proven the world that women can have a powerful impact and in different issues, not to say a more influential approach than that of a man. On the other hand, the world has countless of women who are a part of informal economies that work tirelessly to provide for their families. We have innumerable women who, despite of their domestic violence upon them, cover their bruises and put a smile on their face in front of their children. We have accountable women who, despite of the risks of losing their job due to the maternity leave, they sacrifice their career to create families, thus continue the human race. These women are our heroes just as much as the women whose names we all know and whose biographies we have read in the books of history. We are already informed and knowledgeable enough to know that we have to do and what our next steps toward gender equality are. What we now have to do is to start implementing what we have been preaching for the decades. Implementing our inclusion projects and enforcing gender equal policies that have been drafted, finalized and voted. Nonetheless, they remain simply a tick on the boxes of the achievement list of our societies. Our path in this matter is crystal clear. The world is in a desperate need for a change. And we can be that change. On this note, my country of Kosovo has come a long way since the end of the war in having considerable women representation in its state institutions. Starting from the first election in year 2000, Kosovo has introduced a 30% quota for women representation in its parliament. This quota has been crucial in the first years of our democracy, but I can proudly say that this is not a factor for women elections anymore, as most of them managed to secure a seat in the parliament because of the votes they received, rather than a quota securing their seat. Kosovo is the first country in the southeastern Europe to have elected a woman head of state, for which I am humbled and proud to be that woman. I was not only the first woman head of state in this part of the world, I was also the youngest and one of the few non-partisans, chosen as the consensual candidate with vast support from the whole political spectrum. Kosovo, my dear friends, has introduced the law the laws on gender equality in 2007, and although we have come a long way since then, we have not managed to have 50 by 50 representation in all our institutions. This, however, is a milestone, especially given the fact that Kosovo was quite a patriarchal society 30 years ago. And this shows that with goodwill and the strong civic activism, it is possible to change social norm and set an example for the entire world. The theme of today's discussion, Our Equal Future Reimagining a Better World, inspired by adolescent girls, is a great way to discuss how we will pass the torch to our future generation as we enter a new decade. We have failed the past generation of women and the current one. Let us not make the same mistake of failing the future generation. Let us all put the turbines of change into action and transform this world that was made to suit man better than a woman. We compose half of Earth's population, and we cannot continue to let other half take decision on behalf of us. How can we have inclusive laws and policies if the people who are in charge of them only speak of hypothetical situations that may or may not influence the lives of women for the better? Women would be a part and should be a part of the decision-making tables as equals among all of the decision makers. For this situation to become the norm, we need to introduce quotas globally in all spheres. I know that this does not sound attractive as an idea for policymakers, and especially for the private sector, but this technique has resulted with the positive outcomes in many cases where quantity became quality. We also need to work on empowering women and girls within their own household. Boys should be brought up in the same way as their sister, and they should be taught to respect their mothers just as they respect their fathers. The family is the cell of the society, and unless we start implanting the idea of gender equality from this small entity, we absolutely cannot make a change in the national level, let alone at the global scale. And another important component that will help enhancing gender equality in the future generation is the concept of women helping the other women. It is understandable that women have to compete with each other in this game, and this is a competition within our own kind. But let us not forget that we are in this together, and if we do not help one another, I do not expect men to help us. It is us, women, that need to speak up and stand up by one another. We know what is wrong with the system, and only together we can fight it. There is no way to move forward if we do not unite our strengths and push one another to become better and to become stronger. I have learned this in a hard way throughout my mandate as the President of Kosovo, during which the strongest criticism came from my own kind. And I do not want to see other women grow through the same ordeals as I did. I do not want to see the young girls become discouraged by our own kind. We are capable, we are strong, we are fierce, and we are kind. These components are a perfect combination to undertake challenging journeys and become the new change makers in the world. And I strongly believe that the new generation of women has that potential. Our future is in the safe hands, but we have to make sure that we provide the space and the opportunities to let these bright young women to show their true and real potential. It is our moral duty to do so, because the future generation does not deserve to inherit a world filled with hatred and injustice. And I want to end my remarks with a quote from a great Secretary Clinton that has given the platform for action the spotlight it deserves. Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights. As a reminder that our fight for gender equality is not yet over. There is a long way ahead of us, and we need to roll our sleeves, and we need to make more noise in order to be heard, seen, and accounted for. I am hopeful that there is a bright future waiting for us, and united, we can put this injustice to an end.